Greetings, I'm the Soviet Warlord, and today I'm bringing you another episode of Stakhanov's Builds. In this episode I'll be covering the MK1 Braton. The MK1 Braton is the 10.0 standard assault rifle. It's the first weapon you own as soon as you finish the tutorial. If you have at any point lost this weapon, it can be purchased from the marketplace for 15,000 credits. It requires no mastery levels to use. As a completely unmodified build, the MK1 Braton comes with a very low 2.6 impact damage, making this weapon very ineffective against shields. It features 4.3 puncture, making this weapon fairly mediocre and also quite usable against armoured targets such as Grenier. But where it excels is 10.2 slash, its highest damage value. Its accuracy clocks in quite high at 40. 40 accuracy means you will have virtually no trouble tackling enemies at any distance. However, with a fire rate of only 5.8 rounds, this is very low and will severely limit your damage per second. This gun, however, does have 60 rounds per magazine. That means that this rifle has a lot of ammunition to spare, and only 2 seconds per reload at a very sprightly performance. Although the MK1 Braton is hailed as one of the worst weapons in the game by some, it has become surprisingly usable in Damage 2.0. The huge magazine makes an ideal support weapon, and that's exactly what this build is going to be centered around. My build focuses on damage and fire volume, which will be able to repel entire groups of Grenier and Infested and better clear the way for your teammates. To this end, my first recommendation is indeed Serration. Gives you a 165% boost to your overall base damage, and with no drawbacks whatsoever, this modification is an absolute must. It will consequently boost the damage of anything else you add, including elemental damage. There is no reason not to run this mod. Another logical choice, and consequently my second, is Split Chamber. This essentially doubles the damage you can do per shot for free. At maximum level you have 90% chance of firing 2 shots for the price of 1. As mentioned, this means you essentially have double damage. But since both of this Serration and Split Chamber cost a hefty 29 mod points just for these two, it's very advisable that you use a former for at least one of these. Next, we amp up the damage in a slightly more detrimental way. Since the MK1 Braton's accuracy is so high, the detriment of heavy caliber is not so much of a problem for this weapon. Even with heavy caliber, the MK1 Braton can still reach out and hit very hard. Albeit you might miss a couple of shots owing to Split Chamber, this weapon still manages to reach out a very long way in a support role, despite the accuracy hit. It is, however, not recommended to boost this mod too high. Mine rests on rank 7 and I have had no trouble. With heavy caliber, Serration and Split Chamber all working in tandem, you have more or less brought the base damage of this weapon up as high as physically possible, without compromising too much on the weapon's strengths. Now that has been addressed, we can now begin to iron out one of the key weaknesses in this build. Shred would be my next choice, conferring 30% to your fire rate. Although this may not seem like much, with the fire rate as low as the Braton, any addition to the fire rate is more than welcome, and that 30% brings you just on par enough to make you effective. It may seem like an unorthodox pairing, but Metal Auger is my next choice. Before Damage 2.0, it previously conferred 0.6 meters of punch through. However, post-patch, it now gives you a staggering 2.1 meters. This also stacks with Shred for a total of 3.3 meters punch through. This can allow you to cut through almost 10 enemies at a time with a single shot. This makes it amazing for stopping large groups. On top of that, you can also shoot through the very thick pillars on the Corpus attack ships. You can shoot through doors, walls, corners, storage containers and almost anything imaginable. With this level of puncture, or punch through as it is now known, you will be absolutely unstoppable. With the MK1 Braton's damage increased, and its group damage appeal addressed with the addition of Shred and Metal Auger, in order to complement the rate of fire and elevating this weapon into a true support role. Tainted Magazine makes a very viable selection. At maximum rank, it grants you 40 extra bullets, or 66%. This is a hefty increase. Although slowing your reload down by 33%, that's only roughly 0.7 seconds. This is not a bad trade-off at all, as the Mark 1 Braton's reload is very sprightly anyway. With so many bullets in your magazine, it will keep you in the fight for a lot longer and will keep you firing, and it will also make sure your teammates are always covered with a barrage of fire whenever they move around, especially on defense and survival missions. You can make a key difference with this weapon. With all of its traits now improved, the only thing left to do is add on an elemental multiplier to your damage. Personally, I would recommend corrosive damage, a combination of infected clip and Stormbringer together. Since the Mark 1 Braton has fairly mediocre puncture damage, it makes it a very ideal pairing. However, if you wish to capitalise on your damage against the infested, viral damage can work just as well. That makes a combination of cryo rounds and infected clip. Virus damage works unbelievably well against the infested, so that wraps up my build. It's one focused on sustained fire and very high damage potential. The build is also very versatile. The swap of two mods can easily change its purpose. However, in order to get to the sheer power of this build, you will need 8 formers. Every slot will need to be polarised in order to fit every single one of these mods in their highest form onto the weapon. If formers aren't your strong point, then you may need to cut down on perhaps the Tainted Magazine. But if you get 8 formers on this weapon, it's an amazing build. In short, the Mark 1 Braton is an amazingly team effective build if you can construct it correctly and use it to its strengths. Any weapon in Damage 2.0 can be amazing, and the Mark 1 Braton is no exception. Use it well, your teammates will love you for it. This has been Stakhanov's Builds, episode 2. I hope you've enjoyed. Peace out.